What's up? So, it's interesting because I think that we have been programmed to believe in the images that are projected to us about like certain things and types of people, right? So if I, say a witch, right? You're really gonna think of like some projected image of what witches have been like around Halloween time or something. You would never, think of a witch as a just a regular everyday person. And I remember when I was a kid, there was this movie called Witches. And, when you look at those witches, those look like regular everyday grandmothers, right? But they were witches. They hated children, right? And I say this to say that, a lot of people have witch and warlock spirits. And these people, their mission is really to, cast bad energy upon targets that make them feel bad about their wickedness. I mean, because that's really when what you think of people who kind of gang together and they want to create narrations or manipulative, perceptions of other people. They are really operating with, dark spirits, jealousy, envy, all of that stuff. These are dark energy spirits, right? And when you take it a step further to start, kind of trying to smear campaign people's name or, try to, cause some type of reputational harm because you can't measure up to the image of the person that you're looking at, right? This is where the witchcraft kind of starts, right? Because when you are engaging in conversations and assumptions and negative rhetoric about somebody that don't know you, that likely doesn't even deal with you, right? You are casting, sort of dark energy into the sphere. And depending on, the person that you are targeting, right? They could be protected by, way more powerful energies than you. And, this is where, God's people, and you've seen prophets in the past, wicked spirits were afraid of them. They fled from them. They listened to their commands, right? They were able to rebuke them. Um, and even in the Bible, it talks about, aspects in which you've had people like Paul go into the markets and people who had demons attached to their souls would follow him around and try to taunt him, right? And eventually Paul had to rebuke the demon. But I say this to say, and I think that was a little girl too. So that tells you that some of them kids were, careful what your kids are dabbling in, right? But you know, I've been on this tangent of people being conscious of, excuse me, protecting their peace because I really do feel like there's a lot of wicked spirited people in this world. And unfortunately, we have to interact with them. If you have any type of business engagements, you know, but there are some people we don't have to. And I think even down to social media, I think one of the things that made me decide to delete a bunch of people is that I would just look at the content that's coming, in my timeline. And, I don't, I people live their life the way that they want to live their life, but it's just the consistency of the way that they live their life versus the way I choose to live mine. And it's different. And, and it's okay for it to be different, but if the alignment is too off, it's like I don't even want that energy in my timeline. Um so I say this to say that, witches and warlocks, right? They are people that are not even aware sometimes that they are, that the evil that they're doing, the and especially if it's straight intent and targeted, that, they are, engaging in witchcraft, forms of witchcraft, and things do not tend to work out well for people who do things like that. Like, you think about somebody who's so miserable, they hate their lives, and so they dedicate, their time to coming up with a gang of other miserable people to target somebody that they're clearly jealous of, that they're clearly intimidated by, that they clearly wish that they could be. And I always say this, look, we get the same 24 hours every day, you know? We get the same 24 hours every day. What you do with yours is your business. What I do with mine is my business. And we'll just look at the outcomes of everything, right? So, excuse me. I am done talking for today. I talk all day. I'm a little chatterbox when you get to know me, if you can get to know me. But yeah, you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will catch you on my next video. I find that mixing the video content with the written content, I think, is a great way for people to kind of revisit me, and so when they're like, who does she think she is? Bitch, here's a video. Now you know. Bye.